Welcome to the great outdoors. Now, few vehicles are as well suited to a setting like this as the ones behind me. With us today are the Land Rover Defender and the Jeep Wrangler. Now, both of these vehicles are designed to take you to the corners of the earth, but our little adventure today starts in Mumbai. The big event, however, is at the Learn Off-Road Academy at Khopoli. Time to get dirty. We've covered the highlights of the Defender and Wrangler before, so won't get into the nitty-gritties here. As you'd know, these are essentially very different takes on the Go Anywhere formula. We've been itching to get the two together for a long time. Before we go any further, tell us what would be your pick of the two and why in the comments below. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Autocar India channel now. A bit about Learn Off-Road Academy's training ground. Spread over 65 acres, it's a place to hone serious skills, and in the monsoons is an absolute no-go for two-wheel drive vehicles. The grass is slippery and the paths leading to obstacles become slushy obstacles unto themselves. It's the Defender that in my head is the underdog in this setting. It's on all-terrain tires, and monocoque construction and all-independent suspension don't scream world-conquering off-roader, do they? The reality is very different, as I learned shortly. Like an Olympic athlete, the Defender has its own pre-game ritual. Selecting low range via a button on the center console primes the Land Rover for serious action, and almost as a statement of intent, the air suspension also extends to max off-road height that gives an added 75mm of clearance, taking ground clearance to 291mm. In doing so, it also enhances approach, breakover and departure angles. Setting up the Defender for off-roading is really straightforward. You press the terrain response button here. Now, mud ruts would be an ideal program for today, but you also have the option of an automatic mode. What that means is the Defender will do all the thinking for you, all the calculations will be done. It'll allocate power between the front and rear axles accordingly. It'll automatically lock the rear diff or the center diff according to the conditions. So all you need to do is really just focus on the steering aspects. The first part of the course is like a warm-up. The Defender makes the water pit at the start seem like a leisurely dip. It's an easy crawl down the steep slope, and even the knee-high water is dispatched as if it were a mere puddle. Land Rover says the Defender can wade through an incredible 900mm of water, which is an ability that in reality will find more use on waterlogged city roads than on an off-road course. The steep exit out is clean and graceful. Next up, the rocky path. Now I am on the rocky path, and here is where the Defender can really flex with its technology. It's got cameras all around, so I do have a lot of eyes around the car. I get a full 360-degree view of where I am, my entire surroundings. And there's also a camera underneath the car that actually tells you the surface you're going to be going over, which is really handy. But on a rainy day like this, the camera is all wet and fogged up, so it isn't much use, to be honest. The Defender makes light work of the rocky path, and quickly it's on to a slightly intimidating hump that's almost like a giant muddy speed breaker set at an angle. A slow crawl up, weight transfer at the summit, and a slow crawl down is what's expected, but things don't go to plan. And there will be a lot of weight transfer all of a sudden, and there you can feel the Defender's all-terrain tires just cannot hold on to the surface as well as the Wrangler's mud terrain tires. I just slid down, and that can be quite unnerving, to be honest. The first part of the course ends with a slow hop over a series of pipes. Things get tricky as we proceed on. Up ahead are deep ruts leading up a gentle slope. This will test articulation among other aspects. It is really struggling to put down its part. It's like almost like driving over chocolate mousse, if you please. Okay, now the ruts are looking really imposing on both sides. The slow speed uphill charge is violent, with the Defender slamming from side to side as the tires find grip, but it does make it through. Special mention must go to the suspension that offers far more travel than I'd expected. The last challenge is a sideways slope that seemingly leads to a dead end, except it doesn't. A sharp uphill right turn is the path to freedom, and powering out hard is the only way out. And now behind me you will see a whole lot of sky. This is the most unnatural feeling ever. 25 degrees side incline, 27 degrees side incline, 28. I think I should have skipped lunch. Or maybe I should have added some brave pills, because I timed the exit wrong on attempt 1, which has the Defender scrabble for grip before I have to back off. Over attempt 2, the front tires make it out, but the rear ones can't hook. I almost make it out in attempt 3. There's lots of wheel spin, and just when it seems the tires are biting, the engine frustratingly starts cutting revs, which is a peculiarity of petrol engine Defenders. More speed, frantic lock-to-lock steering in the hope the front tires will anchor onto the wet grass, and lots of drama later, the Defender pulls itself out. We conclude the Defender won't manage more extreme obstacles on its all-terrain tires, so it's back to base. Would the Defender have fared better with more appropriate footwear for the conditions? Absolutely. But even as is, the Land Rover has managed some serious mud plugging. That initial skepticism sure proved unfounded. Time to switch to the Red Baron. With its body-on-frame construction, solid axles and BF Goodrich mud terrain tires, the Wrangler in more hardcore Rubicon guise promises a very different experience. Switching from the Defender to the Wrangler is a culture shock in itself. There's a good old-fashioned lever for four-wheel drive, and the front and rear diff locks are operated via a physical toggle too. It feels analog, and I can't say I don't like it. The steep entry into the water pit is measured. A cool bit of trivia is that the Wrangler's hill descent control can be set to as low as 1 km/h. I don't have any use for it right now, because going too slow on this surface will actually have the wheels lock and make the Wrangler slide down. The water level isn't a challenge for the Jeep that can wade through 762mm, and the climb out of the pit is easy too. The rocky path isn't much of a challenge. The Wrangler is making it feel like any pothole-laden road in Mumbai. Okay, now comes the horizontal hump. This could be a bit more challenging. So, rear diff locked, and there we go. 15-degree roll angle. The Wrangler climbs confidently and, unlike the Defender, holds its ground even over the slow tai chi of weight transfer from rear right to front left. The tires have less airtime, pointing to greater articulation. And now on to wooden logs. Easy does it because there will be a lot of up and down motion, and you don't want that differential to hit. So slow and steady wins this race. But just as I think the Wrangler is walking away with it, there's a loud clang from the underbody. The unassuming horizontal pipes at the end have made contact with the frame and have rudely reminded me how 39mm less clearance can make a world of a difference in the wild. A quick spec check reveals the Wrangler also trails a fully raised Defender on approach, breakover and departure angles. It's over the mud ruts that are to follow. I'm sure the Wrangler will have the upper hand. That's because the Wrangler Rubicon gets a front anti-roll bar disconnect. What that allows is greater articulation. Greater articulation equals greater traction, and greater traction is your get out of jail card in the rough. So let's see how it goes. Rear diff locked, attempt 1 is with the anti-roll bar connected. The Wrangler is just chugging along. Bit of slip and slide here and there, but absolutely no loss of traction at any point. And that is the name of the game. The option to disconnect the front anti-roll bar at the touch of a button just unlocks a new level of ability. The Wrangler is finding grip where there seemingly isn't any. There's so much wheel travel front and rear that the Wrangler keeps planted at all times. Over this obstacle, I also realized that I didn't need to work the Wrangler's engine half as hard as the Defender's. The Wrangler is unfazed by the side incline too. The standard operating procedure remains the same. Maintain a steady pace on the side incline and power out on the exit. The Wrangler treats it as a very routine activity. 22 degrees roll angle. 25 degrees roll angle, and okay, time to power out. That was just a piece of cake in the Wrangler. The Wrangler Rubicon almost seems ready for more. A key point of difference that also comes through over the course is that I find myself taking more liberties with the Wrangler. It feels like an off-road tool ready to take a beating. In the plusher Defender, I was more risk averse, which does limit how much fun you can have off-road. That's that for the off-road bit. Here's what the day started like when the cars were clean. First up in the Wrangler. Just as purposeful as the Wrangler looks on the outside, its interior is also a place for serious business. The grips and the handle on the dashboard are not for show and actually come handy when you're in the rough. And I can't tell you why, but just the mere presence of a mechanical lever for the four-wheel drive system is a very reassuring thing in this cabin. And that off-roadiness is what defines the Wrangler. In a world where just about everything is classified as an SUV, the Wrangler stands out by being an off-roader first and one that just happens to offer you a few more creature comforts. The list of amenities on a Wrangler is quite short. You get dual zone climate control, there's a fairly nice touchscreen, you get a large and informative MID display, and for all those who are wondering, where's that all-important sunroof? Well, the Wrangler goes one up on your concern. With a few clicks, you can take the entire roof apart. It doesn't get more panoramic than that. But the seats are not powered, and what is possibly a bigger irritant if you like to spread out and sit like I do is the narrow footwell. There's not much place for your left foot. And on the subject, if you're looking for a relaxed highway cruiser, the Wrangler is certainly not the right kind of car for you. There's this ever-present roar from the mud terrain tires. You'll have to talk loudly to communicate with your passengers. The ride remains busy at all times, and what will also keep you busy is the constant requirement to make small corrections at the steering wheel. It's expectedly not the last word in handling. The Wrangler changes direction smoothly, but you have to be realistic about its handling capabilities. The steering is slow, and the Wrangler will take its time around a corner. But the Wrangler will take you far irrespective of road condition. Bad roads mean absolutely nothing to the Wrangler. You will feel a judder into the cabin, but you can even go at triple-digit speeds over a bad patch of road with the confidence that no harm will be done to the Wrangler. The ride is choppy and something your rear passengers will feel most often on a speed breaker. That said, one of the highlights of the Wrangler is its engine. Now, you typically associate a Wrangler with at least a V6 engine. This one uses a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo petrol engine. For its part, the engine makes a healthy 268 horsepower and it actually feels quite punchy and strong. Press down on the accelerator, there's a moment's hesitation from the gearbox, and what follows is a pretty strong surge of power. Shifting to the Defender revealed just how different it is in its approach to, well, everything. The Land Rover Defender will be closer to everyone's idea of what a luxury SUV should be. Right from the materials used inside the cabin, to the refinement, to just the feel-good elements inside the cabin, the Defender certainly has an edge on that front. Let's go one by one. The Land Rover Defender is tall, it's boxy, it rides on all-terrain tires, but still, refinement levels are really impressive. There's not as much wind noise as you'd expect, there's not as much tire noise as you'd expect, and the hushness within the cabin will actually take you by surprise. To put things in perspective, a Land Rover Defender at 120 kph feels quieter than a Wrangler at 80 kph. The Defender's cabin is also really nicely turned out. I love the mix of materials on the inside, and with its digital dials, this large touchscreen, and even a screen embedded in the rear view mirror, it feels thoroughly modern as well. But if there's one standout aspect of the Defender's cabin, it's how practical it is. There's lots and lots of space for storing small items, and there's so many charging sockets, you'll actually run out of devices to charge. The Defender also does more for the driver in typical scenarios. The Land Rover Defender is tall, it's heavy, so understandably you can't expect it to handle like a performance SUV. In the corners, there's also a lot of weight transfer from side to side and a lot of body roll that you will experience. But to the Defender's credit, the steering is actually quite feelsome and you can drive it with a good deal of confidence. The Defender is also more genteel in its ride quality. There's a difference in the way the Defender and Wrangler go over bad patches of road taken at high speeds. Now, where the Wrangler will judder over a bad patch and sort of tell you, saw what I did there? The Defender is more polite in how it goes about its business. You'll hear less of the suspension at work, it feels more absorbent, and in general, the Defender just cocoons you that much better than the Wrangler does. As for performance, the Defender's 2-litre 300 horsepower petrol engine isn't what you'd call particularly forceful. But what it lacks in that punchiness, it more than makes up with a strong, consistent and very linear power delivery. Should you want more power, the Defender comes with the option of 6-cylinder petrol and diesel engines as well. In the areas of convenience and practicality, the Defender comes up top. The air suspension's excess height eases the journey in, and the Land Rover also has the comfier rear seat, more storage and far more features. You could also opt for a third row of seats, though space at the very back is tight. The Wrangler makes do without niceties like access height and is generally harder to get into. The rear seat is roomy enough for 3, though the low and flat seat isn't quite what Bade Saab will like. Before we get to the verdict, it's important to talk of the Mercedes-Benz G-Class that would have completed our trio of legends. It's a pity Merc didn't have one for the shoot. Salient points include a tank-like build and a properly modern Mercedes cabin with lots of tech. It's closer to the Wrangler in format with body-on-frame construction and coil springs all around, though the latest one uses an independent front suspension. Ground clearance, approach and departure angles are less than on the others, but the G is handy in the rough and boasts rear, center and front diff locks. It's available in India in 2 flavors, but both are unduly expensive. There's the relatively sensible G350D diesel that starts at 1.64 crores, while the wild AMG G63 comes in at 2.4 crores. Back to the Incredibles with us. If there's one thing our rain-drenched adventure has made clear as day, it's that the Wrangler is the more focused off-roader while the Defender is the more accomplished all-rounder. The locally assembled Wrangler Rubicon that costs 57.9 lakh rupees ex-showroom is the one you'd want if hardcore off-roading is a big part of your calendar. It's got the edge in the rough, but what really endears the Wrangler is that it keeps you an active part of the experience. There's no electronic safety net to fall back on, and it's on you to make the most of its hardware. The Defender is more novice friendly in the rough, and in skilled hands at least 80% as good as a Wrangler. Slap on the right tires and the gap reduces further. It's just that in every other setting, the Defender makes the Wrangler feel unidimensional. The Land Rover's comfier, quieter, and has all the trappings of a luxury SUV. The fully imported Defender is expensive though, and this P300 SE costs a full 30 lakh rupees more than the Wrangler Rubicon. But experience a Defender and you'll just want it. It's an SUV that does it all, and it only helps that it looks undeniably cool while doing all that it does. So, I think it's time to get dirty.